Hi, I'm Mark. Welcome back to Three Bridges. So this will be the November update when it finally gets out. What have I been up to? So the last one I did all my rolling stock. So in this one I'll show you my original rolling stock I had as like 10-year-old kid, and how I'm going to use those on the layout, which has started getting me thinking about freight a lot more. So on my original layout is mainly going to be passenger, but I have got the opportunity to do a little bit of freight on various parts of the layout, and I'm also this year or this summer I've been watching an awful lot of American, Canadian YouTube builds, and obviously freight is a big thing over there where they, the industries and that. So I have been thinking about where you could sort of have a freight depot on a couple of places on the layout. The importance of that for me is I don't really have any freight stock, so it will allow me to think about what I'm going to buy in the future, and then I can sort of build up a nice collection of the right thing. So this is my first ever train. So probably like a lot of people, I ended up with the Triang Plus 31 freight set. So I think I'm 8 or 9, so 1971, 72. It runs really well. It ran really well in its time. I then messed around with it as a kid and took it apart and put it back together, and I probably demagnetized it. So this one's had the power unit from another one fitted to it and a bit of a clean up. It's running okay now, so I run it a bit with some of the original wagon. So there was 2 other wagons in the set, so I think this is the horse one. Maybe wrong. Anyway, this one's lost the coupling, and then if you watched an earlier episode, this one took a nosedive off the table when my son was at the controls. So, and that needs wheel fixing. So, but I need to change the wheels on all of them. Anyway, it's nice to have my original set running, and I'm just going to run it as like freight up to Aylesbury. I'll probably get a few other wagons of a similar type. I don't mind the fact that they do look very much like a kid's toy, but they were my toy. I got this one for Christmas. I wasn't expecting it. Obviously my dad chose it, and it always ran really well when I was a kid. It's been a bit sticky, obviously. It's all been stuck in a loft for about 45 years, but it's given it a bit of a clean up, and it's quite happy. But it's great to see it running again. I haven't really got any great plans for it. I think I'll just run it as when I fancy a change, really. So that was number 2. So the third one I bought with my own money, which is the this one. So the first 2 trains I had were a birthday and a Christmas present. This one I bought myself, so I think I was 11 or 12, I think, and I got this. So 74, 75, I think. I'd have bought it at Baker's. I think it was 11 or 12 pounds, I think, at the time. Right, let's see how she runs. So the engine's a little bit growly. I need to see if I can lubricate that out, but other than that, it's running fine. So let's go and find some carriages. So if you watched the earlier episode, you'll know I'm going to run these as the whole classes. I've got two, maybe get a third. So these are going to be my steam day outs from Marylebone, where there'll be a turntable. I've just got to work out how I'm going to turn them around at the other end. So it'll either be a run around or I might try a Y. Anyway, that's one for next year. Anyway, it's nice to see it running again. So on to the last one. So my final little purchase, which was always a bit of a tricky little shunter to run. I suppose doing the review of the rolling stock also got me having a bit of a review of how the year went in my own mind in terms of what I'd done. So YouTube wise, I think there was 33 episodes I managed to do. I started off with the original list about 16 to get me to Moore Park, and what I've discovered is my brain's a bit of a scattergun and I go off at tangents quite happily. So that sort of escalated out a bit. The strange one is the ones that get the most attention are the framework ones. So you show a picture of your roof rafters and you get thousands of views. They don't hang around very long, so I suspect it's sort of picking up an awful lot of woodworking guys who are just not really interested in model railway. The ones that get the lowest views are the scratch builds. Scratch builds are what I really enjoy the most, but I'm gonna not spend so much time maybe filming stuff as I do the scratch builds. A lot of it is still the same, you know, come up with design, print to paper, stick on card, cut out card, stick card together, here's the building. And there's lots of other people who show you how to do that, far more skill than I do. So I think with the scratch builds, I'm just going to focus on what the final output is and show you those. So that'll be less. I'll still do the framework stuff, that seems to be the bit that interests most people. And I've still got a few challenges for that. So if you ever watched the first episode, a few people have, it's sort of, I think people go back to it as they've sort of discovered the channel over the years. So it's sort of slowly crept up to a reasonable number from like, I don't know, 10 views the first month. One of the things I sort of go through is like 5 points that I sort of picked up from a Mark Lino YouTube about how to go about designing your model railway, and he sort of listed a number of points, one of which was have a line drawing of what you want to do and refer back to it regularly. You know, just check, are you still making the layout you want, or have you just completely changed it? It's a good reference point, a good idea. So mine was a quick sketch, it's just of each deck. And I have it sort of, you know, laminated on the wall almost, and I haven't really changed it a lot, so I've still got those main features. There's a few extra lines, points have moved around, stations have changed position slightly, stuff like that, but I know I'm still happy that the end goal is still the overambitious layout that I was warned about at the beginning. So that's good. The other thing that I'm doing with my YouTube build and the way I'm making the layout is I'm doing it sort of one board at a time. So, and I'm very much this summer I've watched, there's a couple of guys in the States that I really enjoy watching, but they're making huge layouts, really big ones, and they've just sort of, well, one's disappeared sadly, so I hope things are okay, and the other guy, you can tell he's just a bit lost really. Every week is just him wandering around his train room showing you what he hasn't done, and I think that is the danger I would have fallen into had I sort of tried to build the whole layout in one go. So I'm quite happy with this board approach. It does stop you because you sort of go, oh, move on to the next section, lay track and do that, but it's, you know, I have to finish the first one before I move on to the next one, and it does get me redoing certain things, so I'm learning as I go along. So Scenics wise, so I sort of said that I didn't know much about it. I don't really feel I've made any progress on scenics. I'm going for the 80% is good enough, i.e. some ground cover. When I come to do the next deck up, which will be year 3 and 4, is pretty much all scenics. So I'm giving myself some huge long country views, and so I'll focus more on the scenics then, and then I think what I'll do is I'll come back and re-look at some of the small scenic sections that I've got on my Chiltern line that I haven't been able to do. So yeah, so that's how that's gone. And the other one is what would be for next year, I suppose, if this is the start of year 2. So the majority of next year is going to be down the other side of the loft, and it's basically my London stretch, and it's basically all scratch build, several stations, and sort of town city landscape. So I'm trying to work out how to do it with not drifting too far away from the railway line. I found Amersham building that in the back street a bit waste of time, really, because you don't really see it. So I think I need to be quite careful about how I lay the ways you move away from the tracks and away from the station. I think I'm just going to go for very sort of shallow backdrops and buildings, so I won't go mad and start creating whole streets and towns and things like that. So yeah, so I had a few thoughts for that, but yeah, I'm quite happy with how year 1 went. I didn't quite get to that last station I wanted to do at the end, but then I put in the return loop, and I'm getting a lot more fun out of doing that one. Okay, well, this is probably a good point to recap on progress of the year. So when I probably showed you my loft first time, I think it was late January, February time, there was just nothing up here. And I had a plan to build some framework out in the garage. So by, I think it was April, I'd got my Wendover board in. So that actually had something in the loft that I could run trains up and down, albeit a short distance. And then by early summer, I'd got Amersham board in and the underground. And then late summer was the final board, which is that one right at the far end there, which is my Moor Park. And also, as I've been doing this, I've been doing the incline at the back. The other big one is obviously I've got these B brackets, I suppose I call them. So they're all down this side now. So it means that the next deck up, West Coast line, and the East Coast line at the top will be a lot easier to fit, because it's just a case of making frameworks and slotting them in place. And obviously I've got the incline as well, running all the length of the loft at the back, so that's all ready as well for next year, the year after, when I can start running trains up it. So the other side of the loft, still got nothing done there, but that was always intended. And the only change was I was going to have a board at the end, but I decided to put the return loops in. So I've got a return loop here. Sorry for swinging around too much. So that just allows me to have a return loop and a temporary board. And this is where Aylesbury will be going next year. So I've got enough temporary board that I can start laying out and seeing if it will fit in the space, which I'll be doing after Christmas. So yeah, really pleased with how the year went. I made a lot of progress. I've got the basic structure for the framework sorted out in my head, and I've built enough of it now that I'm very confident what I need to do for the next stage. And so yes, it's been a really good year, and nice to have trains running as well and test out all the rolling stock. So on that point, it was a good year. It still feels like a big mess, but when it's just your own mess, you don't really care, do you? I suppose the big change was the return loop either end. So I've got continuous running of trains whilst I'm just up in the loft. Really enjoying that. Hadn't really thought about that when I first started it, and it's a temporary thing. So I'm thinking about obviously the next bit, because at some point I have to sort of take those out and start building the end stations and the next part of the layout. So I'm going to look to see how I can get my underground as a continuous running loop as soon as possible, once I've made some more progress with it. So this is a good point to talk about the underground. So I started another series called Mind the Gap, which is just basically the scratch building of Uxbridge Station. So if you saw earlier episodes, I took you through the building of the main entrance, and it's sort of inspired by the Uxbridge station that I remember from my teenage years. I've still got to do the shops underneath. I'm not going to rush them. I want to do them in time, and I've got plenty of time later to sort that out. I will definitely be having a record shop. I'm not quite sure about the other ones yet. And obviously you go then through to the station behind. So this thing's sort of sat gathering dust at the moment, whilst above it, slow progress. But I suppose I tend to, if I'm not sure what I'm going to do next, I tend to go and do something else and then come back to it. So Uxbridge has taken a bit longer. There's going to be a separate episode this month about the next stage on Uxbridge, so that's obviously the bottom level. So if you've not followed it before, I don't have any fiddle yards on my layout, I keep saying this. So Uxbridge is basically my fiddle yard from my underground. It's going to have 8 tracks. Basically I can put 6 trains here, and then the 2 inner ones on the lower level as a runaround. I've got 3.5 trains so far. This is level 2, and then obviously you can see down the atrium in the middle, and then it goes along, and then it starts to, this is where I suppose the start of the 3 levels leave the station. Working on the lights for level 1, which hang down from level 2, and then the very last episode will be about Christmas time, will be the building of the final top level here, which will be a replica of basically the structure at Uxbridge. So everything below is inspired by Rotterdam station and my trip there years ago again. And so in the introduction to Mind the Gap, I go through all of that. I've enjoyed doing this. I'm quite glad I've got a big station for the underground. I still haven't quite got my head around DCC, so that's my biggest challenge for next year, is to get this running DCC. Well, I just remembered I didn't share my 4th purchase as a kid. So this is my little Dockland shunter. Anybody who's ever owned one of these will know they're lovely, but they're a bit temperamental, partly because it's a very small wheelbase and they don't like points, so they basically need to stay alive. Anyway, I'm not going to show this one running. It growls like anything, but it still runs. And there is a plan to have this on the layout. When I was first thinking about this a year and a half ago, I did realise I wanted to use everything, and obviously you sort of go, well, I really need a dock. And then I suppose, yeah, life events have meant that I have an opportunity to put a little dock in my layout, but it's not going to be for several years. So I've got several years to get this thing a lot happier with a stay alive. Maybe even DCC, I don't know. But anyway, yeah, I always love this one, so it's can go on the wall of inspiration to keep me going. And as you can see, I've started making string trees on bushes. So I'm going for an autumn colour, so I'm taking lots of pictures. I need to get a bit more brown and red into this, but these small bushes will start appearing on the layout. I also bought the bullet and bitten the bullet and got some seafoam, so I can start making some taller trees as well. So that's all between now and Christmas, which I'm looking forward to doing. So that's going to be it for this episode. I've enjoyed the year, enjoyed doing a lot of the woodwork and framework. Has been good fun, so not really a challenge for next year. The big challenge, I think, is just getting the DC lines running up and down and with the various points. So I need to remove the end loops or isolate those so that I can have the layout running as I want. I need a control desk, and I need to get my underground line running with a return loop, and getting my Uxbridge station up there, and getting the tracks to it, as you can probably imagine, with the entrance with the tracks on 3 different levels. I've got to get from 2 tracks to 6. Right. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this one. It's been a bit of an odd bag. I'm going to do this once a year, I think. I'll just do like a recap of how things have gone, what I think has gone well, what's challenges for the following year. And on the next one, I'll maybe catch you in December with a bit more update on the current layout. So as always, thank you for watching, and maybe I'll catch you next time. Cheers.